Imagine opening your eyes to a world where curiosity has vanished, a world where attention spans last mere seconds, where complexity is avoided like a plague and simplicity is treated as a virtue, a world where fleeting opinions masquerade as truth, where shallow distractions outshine meaningful thought, and where genuine wisdom is mocked rather than admired. Now pause for a moment and ask yourself, are we already living in that world? Welcome to this exploration, a deep dive into what can only be described as a silent crisis, the rise of collective ignorance, and the hidden cost humanity pays when insight is dismissed, ridiculed, or forgotten. Stay with me, because by the end of this journey, you won't just see the decay happening around you. You'll understand how it's quietly reshaping your thinking, your choices, your relationships, and ultimately, your future. And the final perspective we'll uncover might be powerful enough to permanently change how you view the world. Before we dive in, take a moment to support this mission. Like, share, comment, and subscribe, because this isn't just another video. It's a call to wake up, and your voice might be the spark that reaches someone still lost in the noise. From reverence to ridicule, how wisdom was devalued. Let's start with a haunting question. How did we move from celebrating philosophers and thinkers to ridiculing intelligence and glorifying ignorance? In ancient Greece, the term idiots described someone who refused to participate in civic life, someone who opted out of responsibility and higher thought. Ironically, what was once seen as shameful is now normalized, not because people lack the ability to think, but because we've collectively decided that deep thinking is inconvenient. Today, questioning anything feels like too much work. Nuance is boring, complexity is frustrating, and in its place, a culture that rewards simplicity, even when it's shallow or false. But here's a truth that should unsettle you. When a society abandons wisdom, it doesn't become freer, it becomes easier to control. Think about it. In a world where algorithms decide what we see, where echo chambers feed us manufactured opinions, and where emotions are weaponized against reason, what happens to truth? It stops being recognized altogether. This problem isn't confined to politics or social media. It's far deeper. It's the rejection of critical thinking, self-reflection, and intellectual humility, the very foundations that sustain a wise and resilient civilization. Socrates once said, "The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing." That simple statement has the power to dismantle the arrogance driving today's chaos. But how often do you hear such humility celebrated in modern life? Instead, we live in an age where confidence overshadows competence, where volume matters more than validity, and where popularity is mistaken for credibility. The psychology of shallow thinking. Daniel Kahneman, a Nobel Prize-winning psychologist, revealed that human beings are wired for mental shortcuts, a fast, instinct-driven process he called System 1 thinking. It's useful for quick decisions, yes, but wisdom demands System 2 thinking, slower, deliberate, logical. System 2 is the part of us that pauses to ask, is this really true? What's missing here? What are the long-term consequences? But there's a problem. Slow thinking doesn't trend. Viral content is quick, emotional, and reactive. We're being conditioned, day by day, to crave shortcuts, illusions, and instant answers, while insight, patience, and contemplation wither away. The result? We lose our ability to spot manipulation. When people stop thinking critically, they become easy prey for lies that sound like truth. They follow instead of question, conform instead of investigate, and eventually lose even the desire to seek what's real. The hunger for meaning in a noisy world. Now let me ask you something personal. Have you ever felt surrounded by noise yet starved for meaning? Longed for conversations that mattered, only to be told you're too serious or too intense for caring about things that actually matter? If so, you're not alone. You belong to a shrinking minority, a group that still values the sacred act of thinking in a world that's forgotten how. But here's the hard truth. If we don't actively protect wisdom, we don't just risk losing it, we risk becoming dangerous without it. History proves this repeatedly. Civilizations rarely collapse because of outside forces. They crumble from within through moral confusion, intellectual apathy, and a populace more obsessed with distractions than with truth or responsibility. Roman philosopher Cicero once warned, "The treasury must be refilled, debt reduced, arrogance restrained, and reckless spending halted, or Rome will fall." Sound familiar? Patterns repeat because people forget. When wisdom is discarded, every generation is condemned to relearn the same painful lessons from scratch. But not you, not today. Because the fact that you're here, still listening, means something inside you is still awake, still searching. And that spark of curiosity, that's how it starts. Wisdom is contagious, but so is ignorance. Wisdom isn't just personal. It spreads. One awakened mind can ignite another, and slowly it begins to push back against the tide of ignorance. But here's the catch. If we want to keep that spark alive, we must confront the forces designed to smother it. In the next part of this journey, we'll pull back the curtain and expose how mass ignorance is carefully engineered. Not by accident, but by design. We'll reveal the incentives behind it, the systems that profit from it, and most importantly, how you can break free. Because if ignorance is the disease, then wisdom is the cure. And the revelation we'll uncover next, it could completely transform how you navigate this world from today onward. There's a powerful lesson hidden in one of the most famous psychology experiments ever conducted. In Solomon Ash's conformity study, participants were placed in a group that deliberately gave the wrong answers to simple questions. What happened? Most people, even when they knew the correct answer, chose to agree with the group, despite knowing it was wrong. And here's the unsettling truth this revealed. Many would rather be wrong together than stand alone in truth. This is how mass idiocracy sustains itself, not through fear of punishment, but through the fear of being an outsider. This primal need to belong, it becomes the invisible leash that guides entire societies. The less a culture values wisdom, the more it leans on emotional manipulation to keep itself intact. Groupthink replaces individual thought. Tribal loyalty overshadows nuance, and moral posturing, what we now call virtue signaling, takes the place of genuine integrity. People stop embodying intelligence and instead begin to perform it. They learn what phrases to repeat, what opinions to broadcast, and what trends to endorse, all while slowly drifting further away from their inner compass. Here's where it becomes tragic. Every time you silence your own questions, just to blend in, you lose a part of yourself. You trade wisdom for approval, truth for comfort, awareness for acceptance. And over time, that quiet trade becomes dangerous. The longer you suppress your own thoughts, the more you forget how to even hear them. This is the hidden cost of collective ignorance. It erodes the very sense of who you are. It convinces you that silence is wisdom, that numbness is maturity, that apathy is peace. But none of that is true. That's not wisdom. That's surrender. Decades ago, the astrophysicist Carl Sagan warned, "We live in a society deeply dependent on science and technology. yet barely anyone understands either. He wasn't only warning about knowledge, he was warning about awareness. True awareness requires courage. The courage to think rather than simply consume. And courage is rare because it's uncomfortable. Choosing wisdom means being misunderstood. It means stepping away from the crowd. It means facing truths that bruise the ego. But here's the reward: freedom. Because when you think clearly, you cannot be controlled. When you question deeply, you cannot be misled. And when you choose awareness over comfort, you awaken a power that's been with you all along. Now here's the paradox. We are living in an age overflowing with information, yet starving for meaning. You can scroll endlessly, absorb thousands of posts, drown in data, and still remain lost. Because information is not wisdom. Wisdom isn't about collecting facts. It's about knowing which ones matter. It's the discipline of filtering noise, spotting deception even when it's wrapped in beautiful packaging, and staying rooted in what's real. A society that's drowning in content but empty of meaning becomes dangerously easy to manipulate. So what's the way back? We need to rebuild our relationship with truth. And that begins with 3 inner revolutions. First, the courage to be wrong. Wisdom requires humility. It's the willingness to question yourself, admit you don't know, and hold your beliefs lightly. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, it's impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. Second, the practice of deep thinking. Slow down, make space for silence. Choose books over headlines, questions over assumptions. Learn to listen, not just to others, but to your own mind. Third, the strength to stand alone. Truth often brings solitude because it rarely wins popularity contests. But solitude is not isolation. It's the cradle of clarity. Stand firm long enough, and your clarity becomes a beacon for others lost in the fog. Now I want you to pause and ask yourself, when was the last time you truly thought for yourself? Not repeated, not followed, but stopped and asked, is this belief really mine? Is it even true? Does it bring me closer to wisdom or further from it? Ask these questions often because the world is loud and lies are comfortable. But beneath all that noise, your mind is still capable of brilliance. Your soul still remembers its depth, and your presence still matters. As we reach the final chapter of this journey, let's confront the ultimate price of losing wisdom. Not just for society, but for the individual soul. Because when wisdom dies, we don't just lose intelligence, we lose meaning itself. Wisdom isn't about collecting clever quotes or reading endless books. It's about clarity, the ability to see deeply into yourself, into others, and into reality. When that clarity fades, confusion becomes normal. You drift. You live on autopilot. Days blur together. Goals feel hollow. Life turns into a loop that's familiar, but painfully empty. And when an entire society lives this way, it stops dreaming. It stops questioning. It simply obeys. We're told progress is about speed, efficiency, productivity. But here's the deeper question. If we're sprinting in the wrong direction, is that really progress? Wisdom asks, why are we running at all? What are we chasing? And what have we abandoned along the way? Here's the most devastating truth of all. The greatest danger of mass idiocracy isn't that people are wrong, it's that they stop caring about what's right. It's not ignorance alone that destroys civilizations. It's indifference. The moment we stop caring about truth, we become effortlessly controllable. Not by governments, but by trends. Not by force, but by fatigue. Yet the cure is still within you. Wisdom doesn't demand perfection. It doesn't ask you to have all the answers. or to live without. Mistakes. What it asks of you is something far more profound, awakening,